A 7-year-old accidentally revealed my wife's affair, and she declared, "You're too insecure to handle a real woman's needs. Maybe if you were more like James, I wouldn't have cheated." Her family said, "She's young and confused. You should be grateful she chose you to raise the baby." So I divorced her and left her with nothing. Hey Reddit, so I never thought I'd be posting here, but I literally don't know what else to do right now. Sorry if this is long, but I need to get this all out. Some background. I've 31 male, been with my wife Addison, 28 female, for 5 years. Married for 3. We're both pretty normal people, nothing crazy. I'm an accountant manager, and she used to work at some marketing company, but quit last year to stay home and focus on getting pregnant. We've been trying for over a year and finally got the good news about 4 months ago. I was over the moon about it, started planning the nursery, downloaded like every baby app on my phone, the whole deal. So we do this thing where we go to her parents' house every other Sunday for dinner. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but they're decent people and Addison likes the family time. Her mom makes pretty good food, and her dad only talks about his job at the bank for like half the dinner instead of the whole time, so I can deal with it. Sunday, we're over there doing the usual thing. Her cousin Serena was visiting with her 7-year-old son Tyler. Everything was going normal. We're sitting around their dining room table. Addison and I are sitting across from each other. Tyler's next to me picking at his mac and cheese. Then out of nowhere, while her mom is still talking, Tyler looks up at me and says real casual, "Uncle Harry, why are you taking care of James's baby?" I swear to God, the entire table went silent like someone had hit a mute button. Her mom stopped mid-sentence with her mouth still open. Her dad had his fork halfway to his mouth and just froze there like a statue. Even Tyler seemed to realize he'd said something wrong, because he went back to stirring his mac and cheese around. I looked at Tyler confused, because I had absolutely no idea who James was. Never heard Addison mention any James. Then, I looked over at Addison, and her face had gone completely white, like all the blood just drained out of it. "What did you say, buddy?" I asked Tyler, trying to keep my voice normal because everyone was staring. "James's baby. Mommy and Aunt Addison were talking in the kitchen earlier, and Mommy said Aunt Addison is having James's baby, but Uncle Harry thinks it's his." The silence got even worse somehow. Serena looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Her parents were just staring at their plates like they were suddenly the most interesting things in the world. That's when Addison started laughing. But it wasn't her normal laugh, it was this weird fake laugh that sounded wrong. "He's 7 years old, Harry. Kids say all kinds of crazy things. You're seriously going to believe a child over your own wife?" But the way she said it, the way everyone was looking at each other, I knew something was up. There was this tension in the room that you could cut with a knife. Tyler seemed confused by all the adult weirdness and went back to eating. I stood up from the table. "I need to go home." Addison tried to get me to sit back down, telling me we should just finish dinner, but her voice was all shaky and nervous. Her mom asked where I was going, trying to sound normal but totally failing. I told them I was going home and grabbed my keys from the counter. Addison followed me to the front door, asking where I was going and saying we needed to talk about what happened. I told her I needed time to think. She kept insisting I was being ridiculous for believing something a 7-year-old said, but I could see it in her eyes. The panic, the guilt. She knew exactly why I was leaving and what Tyler's words meant. I got in my car and drove off. In the rearview mirror, I could see her standing in the doorway watching me go. Part of me wanted to turn around and go back, pretend like nothing happened, but I couldn't get Tyler's words out of my head. James's baby. The drive home was probably the longest 15 minutes of my life. I kept replaying the whole scene over and over. The way everyone reacted, the way Addison looked, the way Serena couldn't meet my eyes. I got home and just sat on the couch staring at the wall. Started thinking about stuff I hadn't really paid attention to before. How Addison had been acting weird about the pregnancy lately. Not as excited as I thought she'd be for something we'd been trying for so long. How she'd been on her phone more, being all secretive about who she was texting. Little things that didn't seem important at the time but now felt like red flags. About 30 minutes later, I heard her car in the driveway. She came rushing in looking all frantic. "Harry, we need to talk about what happened back there. I told you I don't want to talk right now. But you can't just leave like that. It was embarrassing. My parents think we're having problems now. Maybe we are having problems." She kept trying to get me to discuss it, but I told her I needed space to think. She finally gave up around 11 and went to bed. I stayed on the couch all night just thinking about everything. About our relationship. About the pregnancy. About who the hell James is. Part of me thinks I'm crazy for even considering that a 7-year-old's random comment could be true. But another part of me can't shake the feeling that Tyler was just innocently repeating something he'd overheard. The next morning was probably the most awkward morning of our entire relationship. We usually have coffee together before I leave for work, sit at the kitchen table, and talk about our plans for the day. Nothing major, just normal married couple stuff, but she stayed in bed until after I left. Didn't even say goodbye. I could hear her moving around upstairs while I was getting ready, but she never came down. I spent the whole day at work completely useless. Kept staring, thinking about Tyler's words. My coworker Dave sits in the cubicle next to mine, and he kept asking if I was okay, because apparently I looked terrible. I wanted to tell him what was going on, but how do you even explain that? Hey Dave, my pregnant wife might be carrying another dude's baby and I found out from a second grader. Sounds completely insane when you think about it like that. Dave's a good guy, but he's also the type who would probably tell his wife, and then she'd tell her friends, and before you know it, half the neighborhood would know my business. Left work early around 3 p.m. because I couldn't take it anymore. Told my boss I was feeling sick, which wasn't really a lie. I felt like I was going to throw up every time I thought about the situation. The whole drive home, I was rehearsing what I was going to say. How do you bring up something like this? There's no casual way to ask your pregnant wife if the baby is actually yours. Addison was on the couch watching some reality show when I walked in. One of those dating shows where people cheat on each other in tropical locations. She looked surprised to see me home early, maybe a little nervous too. I sat down across from her and just came out with it. I want us to do a DNA test. The reaction was immediate and intense. She jumped up from the couch like I'd just told her the house was on fire. Are you serious right now? You want to do a DNA test because of something a 7-year-old said? Yeah, I do. She started going off about how I was being ridiculous and insulting. But here's the thing that really got to me. She wasn't acting hurt or confused like I expected. She was acting defensive, angry, like she was pissed off that I'd brought it up instead of being shocked that I didn't trust her. If the baby is mine, then what's the problem? I asked her. You'd do it in a heartbeat to prove me wrong, right? But she flat out refused. Said it was insulting and she wasn't going to entertain my accusations. That's when I knew for sure. An innocent person doesn't refuse a paternity test. An innocent person gets mad for like 5 minutes, then agrees to do it just to prove their point. Her refusing to do it was basically an admission of guilt. She kept yelling about trust and how I was destroying our marriage over nothing. But the whole time she was ranting, she never actually offered to do the test. Just kept saying how wrong I was without being willing to prove it. Who's James Addison? She went completely silent. Just stared at me with this deer in headlights look. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. She knew exactly who James was and why Tyler had mentioned him. I don't know what you're talking about. After a few minutes of awkward silence, she tried to backtrack. Made up some story about James being an ex from college who'd been texting her recently. Said Tyler must have overheard her talking to Serena about it and gotten confused. But even as she was saying it, I could tell she was making it up on the spot. The story didn't make sense, and she couldn't look me in the eye while telling it. Show me the text then. And surprise, surprise, she'd deleted them all. How convenient. Every answer she gave just made her look more guilty. I told her I needed time to think and went to bed early. She tried to follow me upstairs, but I locked the bedroom door. Spent another sleepless night wondering how long this had been going on and what else she might be lying about. The next day, she tried to act like everything was normal again. Made coffee, asked about my plans for the day, the whole routine, but I could see the panic behind her eyes. She knows I don't believe her story, and she's probably trying to figure out her next move. I'm done pretending everything's fine. I know what I heard at dinner Sunday, and I know how she's been acting since then. The refusal to do the DNA test sealed it for me. Innocent people don't act like that. Time to find out who this James guy really is. Serena obviously knows the whole story, since Tyler heard her talking about it. Think it's time to pay her a visit and get some real answers. Serena lives about 45 minutes away in this apartment complex near the college. She works from home doing some kind of social media marketing for small businesses, so I knew she'd be there. The drive gave me time to think about how I wanted to approach this. I couldn't just show up and start accusing her of stuff, but I also needed real answers. When she opened the door, she looked genuinely surprised to see me. Harry? What are you doing here? Right away, I could tell she was nervous. She kept looking past me like she was checking if anyone else was around. Definitely not the reaction of someone who had nothing to hide. I think you know why I'm here, Serena. She let me in, but was acting all jumpy. Wouldn't really look me in the eye. Her apartment was pretty typical for someone in their late 20s. IKEA furniture, motivational quotes on the walls, stack of self-help books on the coffee table. Tyler was at school, so it was just us. I sat down on her couch, and before she could start making small talk, I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Didn't tell her I was recording, obviously. Just set it on the coffee table face down like I was putting it aside. I asked her straight up about what Tyler said at dinner Sunday. About James. Told her I needed to know the truth. She immediately went into denial mode. Started saying she didn't know what I was talking about. That Tyler says lots of random stuff. Kids have wild imaginations. But her body language was giving her away completely. She was fidgeting with her hands, couldn't sit still, kept looking everywhere except at me. I told her I saw her face when Tyler said it. She looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. She tried sticking to her story for a few more minutes, but I just kept pushing. Told her I knew something was going on, and that Addison had basically admitted it by refusing to do a DNA test. That seemed to shake her up even more. That's when she finally broke. Started crying and said she was sorry, that she'd told Addison she needed to come clean, but Addison said she'd handle it. When I asked her to tell me what exactly, she explained about James. How he's Addison's ex from before we got together. How they hooked up a few months ago when I was out of town for that conference. My stomach dropped when she said that. I remembered that conference perfectly. It was in February. Lasted 4 days down in Atlanta. I'd actually felt bad about leaving Addison alone for that long, especially since we'd been trying to get pregnant. She said she was looking forward to having some alone time to catch up on her shows and relax. Turns out she was relaxing with her ex-boyfriend. When I asked if she's pregnant with his baby, Serena nodded and started crying harder. She said Addison told her she was scared to tell me because we'd been trying for so long, and I was so excited when she announced the pregnancy. The timeline made perfect sense. We'd been trying for over a year with no luck. Then I go out of town for 4 days in February, and suddenly she's pregnant in March. I'd been so happy, I didn't even think about the timing. Serena explained that Addison said she'd figure something out. Figure something out. Like lie to me for the rest of my life and let me raise another man's kid without knowing. The anger was starting to set in, but I needed to get all the information first. When I asked how long she'd known about this, she said since Addison first told her she was pregnant. Addison came over crying one night, saying she'd made a huge mistake and didn't know what to do. Serena told her she had to tell me the truth, but Addison kept saying she couldn't. I asked if she just went along with it, and Serena said she didn't know what to do. Addison's her cousin. They grew up together. But she felt terrible about it. That's why she'd been avoiding family stuff lately. She couldn't stand watching me be so excited about the baby when she knew the truth. She trailed off, but I got the picture. Everyone always talks about how excited I've been about becoming a dad, buying baby stuff, reading parenting books, talking about names, all while the baby isn't even mine. The recording had been going for about 20 minutes at this point, and I had everything I needed. Serena was still crying, apologizing over and over for not telling me sooner. Part of me felt bad for her, because she was clearly torn between loyalty to her cousin and doing the right thing. But mostly, I was just angry that another person had been lying to my face for months. I'm sorry, Harry. I should have told you right away. Yeah, you should have. I grabbed my phone and left. Serena was still apologizing as I walked out, but I was done listening. Had everything I needed on that recording, and now it was time to go home and confront my lying wife with the truth. The drive home was weird. Part of me felt relieved to finally know what was really going on, but mostly I just felt numb, like my entire relationship had been a lie, and I was only now seeing it clearly. Time to end this charade once and for all. Addison's car was still in the driveway when I pulled up. She was probably wondering where I'd been all morning since I told her I was running errands, but had been gone for almost 4 hours. I sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to figure out how I wanted to handle this. Should I just play the recording right away, or try to get her to confess first? Walking into the house felt different somehow, like I was seeing everything through new eyes. All the baby stuff we'd bought together, the pregnancy books on the coffee table, the ultrasound pictures on the refrigerator. It all felt like props in some elaborate lie now. Addison was in the kitchen making lunch when I came in. She looked up when she heard me, and I could see the anxiety in her eyes. She'd probably been worried all morning about what I was doing and whether I was talking to someone about Sunday's dinner. How were your errands? She asked, trying to sound casual. I sat down at the kitchen table and just watched her for a minute. She was making a sandwich, but her movements were all jerky and nervous. Kept glancing over at me like she was waiting for me to say something. The guilt was written all over her face. We need to talk, I finally said. Her whole body tensed up. About what? I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. I went to see Serena this morning. The color drained from her face instantly. She put down the knife she was holding and just stared at me. You what? I recorded our entire conversation. Want to hear it? She started shaking her head before I even finished the sentence. Harry, whatever she told you, she told me about James, about February when I was at that conference, about how you've been lying to me for months. That's when she completely broke down, started crying and saying she could explain, that it wasn't what I thought, but I'd heard enough excuses and lies over the past few days. I pressed play on the recording. Listening to Serena's voice filling our kitchen was probably one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Hearing her explain how Addison had an affair, how the baby wasn't mine, how she'd been keeping this secret for months. Addison just stood there crying, while her cousin's words exposed everything. When the recording finished, the kitchen was dead silent except for Addison's crying. I looked at her and waited. What could she possibly say at this point? Her own cousin had laid out the entire timeline on tape. Serena's lying, she finally said through her tears. She's always been jealous of me, of what we have. She's trying to break us up. I almost laughed. So Serena made up this elaborate story about you cheating with your ex? She invented this whole thing about James just to hurt you? Addison nodded desperately. Yes. She's never liked you, Harry. She thinks I settled when I married you. But even as she was saying it, I could see she didn't believe it herself. The story was falling apart, and we both knew it. I asked her why Serena would know so many details about James if she was just making it up. How would she know about the conference timing? About Addison reaching out to him first? About him not wanting anything to do with the baby? That's when something shifted in Addison's face. Like she realized there was no point in lying anymore. She slumped against the kitchen counter and looked defeated. Okay, she said quietly. Yes, you're not the father. Finally, after days of lies and manipulation and gaslighting, she was admitting the truth. But instead of feeling relieved, I just felt empty, like something had died inside me. So what's your plan now? I asked her. She looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, what did you think was going to happen? You were just going to let me raise James's kid for 18 years and never tell me? Harry, please. It's not like that. She started talking about how she panicked when she found out she was pregnant, how James made it clear he wanted nothing to do with fatherhood, how she thought about getting an abortion but couldn't go through with it, how she realized I would be a better father than James ever could be. You wanted a baby so badly, and you'll be such a good father. The audacity was unbelievable. She was trying to frame this like she was doing me some kind of favor. Like I should be grateful she chose me to be the unknowing stepfather to her affair baby. I asked her how she could live with herself watching me get excited about doctor's appointments and buying baby furniture and planning for our future when she knew it was all based on a lie. She just kept crying and saying she was sorry, that she never meant for it to go this far. When were you planning to tell me? Ever? I don't know. Maybe when the baby was older, maybe never. I thought maybe it wouldn't matter by then. Wouldn't matter. Like finding out your kid isn't actually yours becomes less devastating over time. Like I'd be so attached to some other guy's child that I wouldn't care about being deceived. I told her I wanted her to pack her things and leave, that I was done with the lies and manipulation. She immediately started begging, saying we could work through this, that she loved me and wanted to save our marriage. You should have thought about that before you spread your legs for your ex. She flinched when I said it, but I was past caring about her feelings. She'd had months to consider my feelings and chose to lie instead. The conversation went on for another hour with her, alternating between begging for forgiveness and trying to justify what she'd done. She kept saying it was just one mistake, that she'd been confused and emotional. But it wasn't one mistake. It was a series of calculated decisions. Reaching out to James, meeting him while I was gone, sleeping with him, lying about the pregnancy, letting me believe I was going to be a father. Each step was a choice she made. By the end, she was practically hysterical, promising she'd do anything to fix this. But some things can't be fixed. Trust, once broken like this, doesn't come back. I told her to pack her essential stuff and that we'd figure out the rest later through lawyers. She's staying at her parents' house now. My phone's been buzzing all afternoon with texts from her, but I haven't read them. Don't really see the point. Nothing she can say will change what she did. The house feels strange being empty. All her stuff is still here, but it feels hollow somehow. I keep looking at the baby things we bought and wondering what I'm supposed to do with them now. Guess I'll be returning a lot of stuff to Target this weekend. Wednesday morning, I called one of my friends who went through a nasty divorce about 2 years ago. He gave me the name of his lawyer, said the guy was expensive but worth every penny. Made an appointment for that afternoon and spent the morning gathering documents. Bank statements, mortgage papers, tax returns, all that fun stuff you need when your life implodes. I laid out the whole situation for him. The affair, the pregnancy, the months of lies, showed him the recording of Serena's confession, which he said was gold. In our state, you can record conversations as long as one party consents, so it would be admissible if needed. Best news was that since we'd only been married 3 years and the house was mine before we got married, Things should be pretty straightforward. No kids together, no major shared assets. Addison had quit her job to be a stay-at-home wife, but that was her choice, and we weren't married long enough for alimony to be a major issue. The affair actually works in your favor, the lawyer said, especially with the pregnancy deception. Shows a pattern of dishonesty that goes beyond a simple indiscretion. He said he could have papers drawn up by Friday, and that we should move fast before Addison had time to get her own lawyer and start making demands. The whole consultation took about an hour and cost me $500, but it was worth it to know I had a plan. I also changed the locks on the house, which felt petty but necessary. Addison still had her key, and I didn't want her showing up whenever she felt like it. Called my bank to remove her from our joint checking account. Canceled her credit card that was linked to my account. Started separating our financial lives piece by piece. Also went to see my doctor to get tested for STDs. Not something I thought I'd ever need to worry about in my marriage. But here we are. If she was sleeping with James, who knows what else she might have been doing? The nurse who took my blood looked sympathetic when I explained why I needed the full panel. Probably sees this more often than I'd like to think. My phone had been buzzing constantly with texts from Addison. Stuff like, please can we talk, and I love you so much, and don't throw away our marriage. I read the first few, then stopped. Nothing she could say would change anything at this point. Actions have consequences, and she was about to learn that the hard way. Friday afternoon, my lawyer called to say the papers were ready. Drove over to pick them up and spent a few minutes reviewing everything. Petition for dissolution of marriage citing irreconcilable differences and adultery. Request for exclusive possession of the marital home. Division of assets. The whole legal framework for ending what I thought was going to be the rest of my life. Got home around 4 p.m. planning to just relax for the weekend and figure out my next steps. Maybe call some friends, catch up on sleep, start processing everything that had happened. But when I pulled into my driveway, Addison's car was there, along with another car I recognized as her parents'. They were standing on my front porch. Addison must have tried to use her key and realized the locks had been changed. When I got out of my car, her father walked over to me. Addison looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy. Hair was a mess. Her parents looked uncomfortable but determined. This was obviously some kind of intervention they'd planned. Her father stood up when I came in. Harry, we need to talk about this situation. What situation is that? Addison made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should destroy your marriage over it. I sat down across from them and just listened as they launched into their prepared speech. Addison was young and confused. Everyone makes mistakes. Marriage is about forgiveness and working through problems together. She loves me and wants to make this right. All the standard talking points you'd expect from parents trying to save their daughter's marriage. Her mother chimed in about how Addison had been crying for days, how she realized what a terrible mistake she'd made, how she was willing to do anything to earn my trust back. They talked about counseling and fresh starts and the importance of not giving up when things get difficult. I let them finish, then asked her dad a simple question. If your wife was pregnant with another man's baby and had been lying to you about it for months, would you stay with her? He went quiet for a minute. You could see him trying to work out how to answer that without admitting he'd do exactly what I was doing. That's different, her mother said. We've been married for 30 years. You two are just starting out. It's not different at all. The only difference is you've had more time to build something worth saving. We've been together 5 years and she threw it all away for one night with her ex. They kept pushing, talking about the baby needing a father figure, about how I'd already bonded with the idea of being a dad, trying to guilt me into accepting that my role in this kid's life should be as the unknowing stepfather to my wife's affair baby. She chose you, Harry, her dad said. Not him. You. She chose me to be her meal ticket, to raise another man's child without knowing it. That's not love. That's manipulation. The conversation went on for about an hour, with them getting more desperate as they realized I wasn't budging. Addison barely said anything, just sat there crying while her parents tried to fix her mess. At one point, she asked if we could talk privately, but I told her we were past that. Finally, I'd heard enough. Told them this wasn't a negotiation, and my decision was final. Said they had every right to support their daughter, but they needed to do it somewhere else. Her dad looked like he wanted to argue more, but his wife pulled him toward the door. Addison was the last to leave. She stopped at the door and looked back at me. I really do love you, Harry. No, you don't. If you loved me, you never would have done this. After they left, I sat on the couch, thinking about how much my life had changed in less than a week. This time last Friday, I was a happily married guy, looking forward to becoming a father. Now I was about to be divorced and had to start over completely. But for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like I was in control again. No more lies, No more manipulation, no more wondering what was real. Just the truth and the consequences that come with it. It's been 3 weeks since I served Addison the divorce papers and kicked her parents out of my house. I'm doing better than expected, and karma has a twisted sense of humor. The divorce process has been moving pretty smoothly. Addison hired some bargain basement lawyer she found online who clearly doesn't know what he's doing. My lawyer has been running circles around him. She tried to claim she was entitled to half the house value since we'd been paying the mortgage together during our marriage. But that fell apart pretty quick when we showed she hadn't been working for the past year. Hard to claim you contributed to mortgage payments when you had no income. She also tried to go after my retirement account and some other assets, claiming they'd grown during our marriage, so she deserved a share. But again, being unemployed by choice and committing adultery kind of killed her negotiating position. Her lawyer kept pushing for a settlement conference, but my lawyer advised against it. Why negotiate when we're already winning? The most ridiculous part was when she tried to claim she deserved spousal support because she'd given up her career to focus on starting a family. Gave up her career to cheat on me, more like it. Her lawyer actually argued that she was now a single mother who needed financial assistance. My lawyer shut that down real quick by pointing out that she could get child support from the actual father if she wanted financial help raising his kid. Got the STD test results back, and thankfully everything came back clean. Was worried about that for a few days because who knows what James might have been carrying. One less thing to stress about, I guess. Been staying busy with work and started going to the gym again. Haven't been sleeping great, but that's probably normal when your entire life gets turned upside down. My coworker Dave has been checking on me, making sure I'm eating and not drinking too much. Good guy. Haven't told many people the details of what happened. Just said we were getting divorced due to irreconcilable differences. Most people don't need to know the whole sordid story. The house feels different now. Better in some ways, lonelier in others. I've been slowly getting rid of reminders of Addison and our old life together. Donated all the baby stuff we'd bought to a women's shelter. Figured someone could actually use it instead of having it sit in my spare room mocking me. Took down all the pictures of us from the walls. Threw away the pregnancy books and baby name list we'd made together. Found some stuff of hers she'd left behind when she packed in a hurry that first day. Boxed it all up and dropped it off at her parents' house when I knew they wouldn't be home. Just left it on the porch with a note. Didn't want any more face-to-face conversations about second chances and forgiveness. Speaking of her parents, her mom called me about a week ago asking if I'd reconsider. Said Addison was a mess and really regretted what she'd done. I told her that was between Addison and her therapist, not my problem anymore. Haven't heard from them since. Addison herself has stopped texting me constantly, which is a relief. The first week after she moved out, my phone was buzzing every few hours with long messages about how sorry she was and how much she loved me. I never responded to any of them. Eventually, she got the hint that I wasn't interested in her apologies. But here's where things get interesting. Remember James, the ex who knocked her up and wanted nothing to do with the baby? Well, apparently he's been having second thoughts. Found this out through the grapevine. My friend's wife is friends with someone who knows Serena, small world and all that. Turns out James reached out to Addison about 2 weeks ago. Not because he suddenly wants to play house, but because his parents found out about the situation and are pressuring him to step up. Apparently, they're pretty religious and weren't happy to learn their son got someone pregnant and then bailed. They've been guilting him about responsibility and doing the right thing. So now James is talking about wanting to be involved in the kid's life, wants to do DNA tests to confirm paternity, discuss custody arrangements, the whole thing. Which is hilarious because this is exactly what Addison was trying to avoid by lying to me. She wanted a stable father figure who wouldn't complicate her life with custody battles and shared parenting duties. Instead, she's about to be a single mom dealing with an ex who will probably want the kid every other weekend and 2 weeks in the summer. Plus, his parents who sound like the type to have strong opinions about how their grandchild should be raised. She played herself completely. The best part? James apparently has a decent job in finance and will likely be on the hook for substantial child support payments. So Addison's going to get way less money than she would have if she'd just been honest with me from the beginning and we'd worked out some kind of co-parenting arrangement. Instead, she gets to be a broke single mom living with her parents while paying lawyer fees she can't afford. I'm not celebrating her misery or anything, but there's definitely some poetic justice in how this all worked out. She made calculated decisions to lie and cheat and manipulate, and now she's dealing with the consequences of those choices. As for me, I'm doing okay. Some days are harder than others, but I'm sleeping better, knowing I'm not living a lie anymore. Been thinking about maybe getting back into dating eventually, but not anytime soon. Need to process all this stuff first and figure out who I am as a single guy again.